Today I'm speaking with Selena Conmackie, owner and founder of Howy Socially Inspired LLC. We're going to be speaking about the reinvention of self. So when we have these major things that come up for us in life, how do we move forward after that? When everything gets thrown into turmoil and all of the things. So Selena has been there, as many of us have, and she's going to share her story with us today. So we thank her for that. Now, outside of today's conversation, I want to introduce you to what she does as a business owner, because I know that after you meet her, you're going to want to connect with her. Powered by an endless stream of coffee and a splash of aloha, Selena turns tangled tech into breezy marketing magic for small businesses and military affiliated entrepreneurs. As a techie bestie, she transforms websites, funnels, and SEO puzzles into revenue boosting roadmaps. No jargon, just results. Off the clock, you'll find her collecting Starbucks mugs and dishing out encouragement with the same energy she brings to every client project. Without further ado, Selena, thank you so much for chatting with me today. Can we start by you just sharing whatever feels important to you?
Oh gosh. Well, aloha, Heather. I'm so glad that you had me on today. And we've had so many get-togethers and connections online. So it's always a pleasure to kind of be here. But I'm Selena Conmackie and military spouse, mom, I don't know, so many things. And I run my own business.
Yeah, I never know what to say. I'm like, how much do you want to know?
I know. What do
I'm,
you I could
I'm
give you a whole Rolodex, but I know we don't have that much time.
decades worth of life. What's most important? All of it.
Right? Oh, it's so scary to say decades, isn't it? But here we are. Here we
I'm in my 40s. I love this decade of life. So
are.
I get what you're saying,
Yeah,
and I have
yeah.
fully embraced my 40s.
I love that. I love that for you. I'm nearing 50 this year. Actually, that's going to be my big 50 this year, and it's just wild. And my daughter's like, "Mom, that's like half a century." And I was like, "Ugh, gosh, when you say
Thanks
it
for
like
the
that."
reminder.
Yeah, exactly. Kids, they keep you really humble.
Okay, well, Selena, you look amazing. I would have never guessed anywhere near 50. So,
Thank you.
okay. Absolutely. Okay, so we're talking about reinvention after big life stuff, right? Today.
Yes, we are. And it's funny how like you say like the 40s was your era. I mean, that's when I kind of like was in the reinvention for myself at age 40 is I found myself completely pivoting away from my life. So I'm excited for today's topic. I think we have a lot to talk about.
Yes, me too. I'm pumped. And I'm
Yeah.
so grateful that you're willing to share it because, vulnerability, not the easiest thing in the world.
Yeah.
Um, but man, for our community, it doesn't matter what kind of reinvention, right? We all go through it from the day that we become military spouses, if not,
Yes.
before that.
Right.
There is no doubt that every last one of us goes through some major reinvention of some sort.
Yeah. I would love to meet a military spouse that says, "No, I said exactly who I was." I'm like, "You're liar, ma'am. No
Tell me
way."
your story because you are 100% unique and we all want to meet you, unicorn.
Right. Okay.
Right.
So, shall I get started? Do you want me to just kind of share this like
Yeah.
little story of mine? So, okay. So, it's my second marriage, and I am a Hawaii girl, born and raised. Kind of like my whole family is out there, moms, aunts, you name it. And I had a 20-year career. It had been a year since my divorce from my first husband, and I was like, let's date. And I had a couple rules: no
Mhm.
military, no first responders, and don't leave the island. Well, I failed on two of those. And I married an army guy that was stationed out at Schofield Barracks, and I left Hawaii. And
Mhm.
with that, right, there were so many things. I left, and I was 40. I was turning 40. I'll never forget. I actually celebrated my 40th birthday in South Carolina, kind of in transition. So we went from Hawaii to South Carolina, and we had stayed for a couple of weeks with my new husband's parents, and then we were going to drive to Fort Polk, Louisiana, and I was going to see what would life look like there, what kind of how could I take my career there, if anything, and so we drive. From South Carolina to Fort Polk, Louisiana. And if you've never been, it's really in the middle of kind of like a time that isn't like left 1980s, right? It's a sweet town, but it's definitely it was so much slower than I was used to. And I think with a lot of military families, we're used to being put in areas like that, right? When we get moved to, is that it's not a bustling city with the most modern things that are happening. And so we got there. My husband's like, "Don't worry, let's just, spend a year, like you do you." And the whole reinvention was that I had to kind of figure out what I was going to be doing with my life. I had to get my daughter kind of acclimated. I was 40 and realizing the town we were in would not kind of like fill my bucket as far as my career that I had in Hawaii. It was a 20-year career. And I was in the higher executive areas, right? And so I was just kind of, I felt a little lost. And I realized also I was kind of this, I like to joke, and I said all the time, I'm like a old and new military spouse, but with like, I came in with life lessons already, right? I was 40. I'd had a marriage before. I'd lived and paid rent before, all these things that you, and I just, but I, when you come into the military, it really is a little, it's like a different secret society a little bit in that sense where you're
Yes.
just trying to navigate everything. And so I found myself kind of just trying to like figure out how to be this new Selena, because what I had left, nothing of that was here in my new space in Louisiana. And so I found that to be, there was a range of emotions, Heather, with that, a range of emotions of just like, I'm 40, I should have my life together. Did I do the right thing? Like absolutely loved my husband, but did I do the right thing? Did I leave life as I know it to come and start from scratch, literally zero, you know? Walking out the door, I think the most startling thing for me was like realizing that I couldn't just kind of like run to my mom's house to have dinner if she called. I
Right.
couldn't have a besties brunch with my friends, on a Sunday. I had to kind of like make all of these things. I needed to make them happen again. But that just reminded me, and I just had to really kind of work myself out of feeling the sadness. And it is interesting how you can feel multiple emotions, right? Like I was extremely sad that I left home, but I was extremely so in love and loved my husband, and I was so happy, and I just was trying to navigate that,
Yeah.
you know?
Wow. You had a
Yeah.
lot. So it was really
Right?
centered on so many like new spouse, new
Yes.
area of the country,
Yes.
new career path
Yeah.
potentially, um,
Right.
new
Knew
military life
everything.
because that's a whole entire
It,
unique
it
beast of
is.
its own.
It
Own
is.
language, own acronyms, own way of being and doing things, and definitely a community that does bond very quickly in a lot of ways because
Right.
we need to, right? Like you didn't have your mom's house to run to
No.
when you needed the support or just to be with family.
Right.
So with each military move, you tell me if you've experienced this since now you've had some time in the military lifestyle, you create that family wherever
Oh,
you move.
oh my gosh, 100%. Like it was the oddest thing to me, like to be at the bus stop, and we lived on post like in Fort Polk. And so there was a safety that I felt like, okay, nobody, what we're all gonna keep an eye on each other. But
Yeah.
at the bus stop, I had to ask my new neighbor. We've only been in our house for 7 days. Hi, I'm supposed to ask you for, I mean, I know everybody says this, but I
Yeah.
legit had to ask her for her phone number and if she could be my daughter's emergency contact. And I was like, "Hi, I'm Selena, by the way, and you are." And it was just wild to me
Yeah.
that was life. And that's, you say it is fast and furious in the military life. You don't do the, and I don't want to say not nurturing of something, but you literally go in, you assess very quickly if this person's going to be part of your life, or if this area or this activity is going to be part of this very short time you have where you're stationed.
Oh yeah. I was laughing
And
because I
yeah.
already knew what you were gonna say.
Yeah. I think every person, every mom, right?
The
No.
first mom you meet, or you're like
Yes.
somebody that your spouse works with, like
Yeah, right. Oh
somebody
God.
in their office. That's going to be your first emergency contact because you have to have one and you
Yeah.
don't. So you
Uh,
make one.
Yeah, I mean, I remember trying to give them my mom's phone number and then the address, and the lady looked up at me. She says, "This has a Hawaii address. We're in Louisiana." I said, "Uh-huh." She was my emergency contact, and she's like, "Ma'am, you need somebody local." And I was like, "I just moved here. I'm not, but I was just so like shocked. Like, how do you expect me to know somebody? Because I'm still thinking." I know what it takes to build a friendship. There'll be time and there'll be this and
Mhm.
no, no, no. It was
Yeah. Bit of
there
a
was no
culture
dip in the
shock.
pool. They threw me into the deep end and they said, "Ready, go."
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, I think, and I always kind of just like, I mean, kind of going back to just, and I think as soon as I could assess everything that was happening and how life needed to be, I was like, okay, let's make this work. Let's find your people here. And slowly through my first couple of years in the military, it was, okay, I returned to mommy blogging because,
Oh, wow.
I didn't have a career and I had done that for so many years when it was blogger.com. And if anybody is old and if anybody blogged, you know what I'm talking about. And I decided to write for a military, or it was a military one source, and
Okay.
they added me onto their blogger brigade, and I would just start contributing military content, right? And I just enjoyed it. And then I realized, oh, I needed to upgrade my website. And so I said, okay, I'm going to build a new website. And I cried all night putting it together just because it was out of my realm. But I was like, I can do this. And, well, but unbeknownst to me, that's just kind of like where a lot of these things that you learn at home can be
Mhm.
a business for you to create. And so when a colleague of mine had called and said, "Hey, Selena, you want to run our social media and our website for our restaurant back in Hawaii?" I was like, "Sure. Okay." And what was so funny is my mind didn't wrap around that I would be running my own business. I said, "Okay, like what do I do? Do I mail your HR team all my IDs? Do I fill out my I-9s, all the things, right?" And they're like, "No, no, we'll contract you out." And I was like, "What does that even mean?"
Yeah. So like
And
you really just jumped in the deep end or kind of was almost thrown in the
oh
deep end,
yeah,
it sounds like.
right. So it was like not only just kind of learning how to live around my area as like a new person, but I was like, oh, business wise, I realized like, okay. And so my husband and I spent like a couple hours because he was the only other adult I could talk
Mhm.
with, right? And I said, I don't know, they want me to do this, and we were like, just a couple $100. They're like, no, but the internet says I can charge this. So I did that whole thing. You give a range of three, and I had to pitch the big owner of my colleague, right? And he's like, okay, love it. He's like, I'll pick your largest package, and I want to add on. And I came home because I was in my car doing this interview. It was the silliest thing. Came home, told my husband, I was like, "Oh my God, he hired me." And the birth of kind of like this marketing company that I was going to build happened
Wow.
in this little town where I was trying to figure out who I was now as this 40-year-old woman that kind of really had to learn to be dependent on myself. And I don't think I had ever really done that before. Like,
Yeah.
and I mean, I could call my mom, I could call my best friends, but there's a different act of like just driving over to your best friend's house crying and them coming down to the car, right? And just talking you through something and then you just hugging and then you go back home, right?
Yeah.
It's just a different vibe when you try to call them crying on a phone. And they're hours behind you and life is very different for them because maybe they're working. But yeah, this reinvention, and when we talked about this and like how reinvention was not on my bingo card ever, right? But it was, and I think I just said,
It was
okay,
the free space that you didn't know what it was going to
it
be then.
totally was. Oh my God. That would make a great article. Hi, the free space on the bingo card was this, right? But I was like, okay, I have to make the best of it. And I think, my mom, she had given us her blessing when I said, "Hey, mom, what do you think if I get married?" And she knew what that meant. That she meant that I would be leaving. She meant that her granddaughter would be leaving. She's
Yeah.
like, you need to live adventure. And so I just, after And I think everybody does this, right? When you have a big change, you're on this like high and this adrenaline rush of just getting things together. And I think if you're in the military world as well, like it is stressful. You're moving, things are in boxes, your whole life is in boxes. And then now you're in a space, you have to unpack and you have to make it yours. And you just have to kind of look out the door and figure out who's going to be your next best friend,
Yeah.
you know? And so I just kind of I figured that's what I needed to do. And I'm kind of a big introvert, to be honest.
Oh,
Um,
I did not know
I,
that about you, and I wouldn't have guessed.
yeah, no, I'm very, very shy if I have to make the first step if I'm by myself. So if I have a partner, I feel a little more confident. Or if I have a job, like if I'm a greeter, then I'm like, okay, my job is to greet Heather. I'm good, right? And I will tell her hello because I have a purpose to be here. And so there was a lot of things. So I this introvert created a coffee community thing for our neighborhood. I met some people there. I met, which is an incredible story. One of my favorite neighbors ended up being from so my father and mom, they actually ran hotel businesses when I was very young, and we were on an island in Micronesia. My neighbor across the street was from Micronesia,
Oh,
and her family owned the land that my dad's hotel was run on. Like, what a small, small, small world to be in the middle
wow.
of Fort Polk, Louisiana. And we
Mhm.
became instant best friends. When my mom had come to visit, she'd come over and gave my mom this special little gift from Micronesia just to tell her, like, oh my gosh, to think 40 years later that, there would be this connection and whatnot. But I think the reinvention helped me realize I needed to be a little bit more open so I could kind of see all these wonderful things that were like just waiting for me to grab if I wanted it. But I couldn't just sit in my house on the couch watching Army Wives because I thought that was what I needed to do. I thought I'm going to watch Army Wives so I can understand what the culture is like.
Not it. In my
No.
perspective, I watched maybe a couple episodes and I was so annoyed that, I think it's
Yeah.
people can like if you're a military wife or you're in the
Yeah.
military and you see military shows and
Yes.
movies, all of the
Yes.
little things that are not accurate, the rank on the wrong
Right.
uniform or like things misplaced, of
Yes.
course
Yes.
they are, but
Yes.
you're like, that's not real. And it annoys you more than makes you, I don't know. Did you experience that?
Okay, so I still didn't know military life. So my
Okay.
husband would come home, I'd be like, so I could be best friends with an officer's wife that lives is a psychiatrist and he's like, "What are you watching?" And I was like, "I don't know. I don't know. I'm just," and they look like they lived together for 10 years. Like, how is that what's happening to us? And he's just like, you need to stop. But I was just like, I don't know. Maybe he doesn't know what he's talking about. I was so new. I didn't know. I would
Got it.
rewatch it now 10 years later just so I can be like exactly what you're saying, Heather. Like, that would never happen.
Yeah,
This is
that's
exactly, yeah.
inaccurate, not a thing, blown out of proportion.
We'll have to have a watch party together so we can like share notes. But I
Yes,
mean,
yes.
yeah, I literally thought that's what I had to do. So
Got it.
yeah, and it was fun like to kind of circle back to like my kid. We were both like the new kid, and I found that to be very interesting, right? Like she was trying to make new friends, I was trying to make new friends. We both were so new to the area. If she had questions, I was like, I don't know, let's figure it out together.
Yeah.
And there was so much reinvention going on. It was just wild to me. Because I think it's interesting. If I never left, I would still live the life that I was living. I would be in that restaurant career. I would, you know what I mean? Like, and so it's like that sliding door movie, where you miss the train, and if you had gone through the sliding door, your life would have been different.
Mhm.
And so, um, yeah, I kind of found this whole change. I'm very grateful for it. I'm grateful because I think I found the person that I really wanted to be, if that makes sense. And it's on my terms,
Yeah,
you know?
absolutely. I mean, yeah, I do. I absolutely think I hear what you're saying. It makes sense to me.
Mhm.
Um, it's I can't necessarily relate in the same way, but I met my husband when we were both serving in the military.
Yes.
And then And so I went in at 18. And then when I married him, out of partly out of choice, mostly out of necessity, I became a stay-at-home mom, which
Yeah.
eventually is what prompted me to become an entrepreneur because
Yeah.
entrepreneurship wasn't where I came from before that. And so, anyways, what I'm saying is I relate to the necessity of reinventing yourself in many
Yes.
ways. And it's not
Oh,
always a choice. Sometimes it's just the thing that makes the most sense in the moment.
yes.
I mean,
Oh,
it's always a choice, right? But you get what I'm saying.
no, I love how you like framed it like that. It's like the necessity, and that's exactly why things kind of like fell into place is it needed to happen that way. I honestly still don't know if I would have had my marketing business had like my colleague not said from Hoy, "Hey, do you want to run this?" I still would have just ran a mommy blog, and I think eventually would have maybe I don't know, you
So did
know?
you said you had a 20-year career
Yes.
up to that point. I'm not sure if you said what were you doing during that time?
So I was in restaurant management. So I was an
Okay.
assistant general manager, and then I moved into director of sales and marketing. And so I was in charge of like uh going out into our community and like building relationships with like big corporate companies to kind of have them come into our restaurant and do the bigger sales.
Okay.
And so um I had been doing it for so long, it was ingrained in me. I could close my eyeballs and do a floor plan and say what server is going to be in this section and the specials we're going to have with our chef. I mean,
Yeah.
it just it's had started that job too at 18, and kind of grew into it. And so
What you
um
wish an adult, really.
yeah, and so it is wild. I still have a bunch of clients that are actually are restaurants, and so I get to still flex a little bit of my restaurant experience every once in a while. And I'm still contracted out to that first client that kind of said, hey, be part of the team. And it's been like 8, 9 years now with
Wow.
them.
That's
Yeah.
amazing.
And so I'm very fortunate, I'm very lucky, but I think like it kind of goes back to like being open and when these opportunities pass you up. I mean, I was almost scared to be like, no, that seems like I shouldn't do. I don't know. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
I said, okay, okay, yeah, why not? We'll figure it out. We'll make it happen, you know? And
Wow. That
yeah.
requires, okay, so I was going to say what that requires, but actually, I want to ask you the question that's been on my mind as you've been sharing your story is I think, feel like there's probably so many personality traits that you have to really pull out and make use of and strengthen and all the things. What do you think in moving from the life that you had known, like vast majority of your life into something completely new with all of the new things that it brought. What do you think are the personality traits that you most had to lean into and find strength in?
Ooh, I think that and I don't want to say so I think the personality trait is I just kind of brought like a little bit of my aloha spirit, my friendliness, just so I could kind of like get my foot in the door at my daughter's school, at the commissary, trying to understand this tipping the bagger thing or friendliness at an FRG meeting so that I could make my husband like look good and just learning the languages that you say or don't say on posts, right? To an officer versus an enlisted. I mean, just even knowing that those are two different things, right?
Yeah.
So, but I think I leaned in on that and just kind of I've always led with my culture and just kind of what Hawaiian means to me and just kind of sharing the aloha. So I kind of pulled off of that on that
Yeah.
and I think after that, it was really just like this confidence that I didn't know that was sitting there. I was like, okay, we're confident. Let's do it. We have to be. But I sometimes that was a lie. It was a mask just so that I could kind of make it through the day,
Yeah.
you
I
know?
mm,
So, um, I mean, not to kind of, I'm not a downer thing, but just, it is hard. It's hard. It's
not
not
down
just
real
always easy,
life,
right?
right?
Yeah, it's real
Not to
life.
pretend it's all
Yeah.
sunshine and rainbows. We don't have to do that here.
Exactly, exactly. But I realized that that's the to wrap that is the personality trait was just bringing my aloha friendliness attitude kind of forward just to make it okay every day.
I love that so much. You know what's coming to mind for me as I listen to you talk about that is so many of us when we come into this lifestyle and through any shifts, like becoming a mother, all of the things, right? We say the thing that I hear on repeat is losing my identity, losing my
Yeah.
identity. And I definitely felt like that was true for me as well. I lost so much of my sight and what I wanted, and it got buried and all the things, right? So I relate to
Yeah.
that. But I'm curious if you relate to that, because what I think I hear you saying a lot throughout this is yes, there were so many shifts. But when I ask you, what's the personality trait? You said it sounded to me like you said, like at the core, there was this spirit that was ingrained in me from being raised in Hawaii, your aloha spirit that you mentioned.
Yeah.
And it sounds like at the core, you knew that was there and you carried that and that didn't get lost.
Yeah.
I feel like there were other perspectives where you did kind of feel lost and weren't sure who you were or any of that, or being a little
No.
that you entered in it later in life, did you feel like that wasn't as much of a factor?
No, I honestly, I mean, like we mentioned, there were some moments where just like, your cup is empty and you just have to like reset. And so there were moments that I would have just a bawl out crying, like just almost a tantrum with myself of just like not feeling like enough. And
Mhm.
I think that was really the kind of like what really made me go toward this entrepreneurship part because I realized I needed to have a career, and that was part of just like what I needed. And so um, the and that's really where I kind of like felt I really lost my identity. Like I still was a mom. I was now a wife to this man that I this was the kind of marriage that I had hoped to have with somebody, right? There was all these things, and so it was the career part, and I thought, oh, I could just stay at home. My husband said, stay at home, and I was sitting there, and I was like folding clothes again, watching Army Wives, and I was like, this is not fulfilling for me.
Yeah.
And I did. And then I had a mini tantrum. I felt like I lost my identity. And I just, um, no Aloha Spirit was going to help me out of that for a minute. And so, but I think for me is I'm not one to kind of sit and wallow. I was like, hey, you can control your narrative here, Selena. Like, so what do you want to do about it?
Yeah.
And so I just kind of, that's where I applied to be at that mommy blogger or the military one source and be part of that team, and then learning all these tools and trades and building my website and taking the opportunity from the colleague. And so yeah, it was never always perfect, but I think I do kind of reset and always go back to that aloha spirit attitude for myself is I just don't want to live the other way, right? And it's got me through. So but yes, there's times where my aloha spirit gal is like, hey, come on back. You're going a little,
Oh,
you know
that's
what I mean?
powerful though.
Yeah.
Yes, I love
Yeah.
that. But I
Yeah.
hear that. I mean, your experience is like, so it
Everybody.
makes me wonder. I mean, is this kind of just how it is?
Yes.
We all are going to experience it at some point with any major transition, right?
Right. No, it's so
Yeah.
huge. So huge.
So I guess my curiosity is if you were speaking to somebody who is
Yeah.
in a major transition in life, probably military life, since that's
Yeah.
who, we're talking to here. Um, if you could share one or maybe two pieces of advice with them, what would you say?
So I think the first is, and I know we say this a lot, you hear this a lot, but really give yourself permission
Mhm.
to give yourself grace. Because I don't think we do that. We're so hard on ourselves sometimes. And I had this conversation with someone the other day. Is I think as females, especially and women, we're
Mhm.
so emotionally in tune to so much around us, and we feel a lot of responsibility. And so we're kind of always mentally exhausted and physically exhausted all the time because we are going, going, going. So I think
Mhm.
it's just giving yourself permission to take a break and to give yourself grace. Like I think it's you're gonna figure it out, but
Mhm.
take that moment. And I think the second thing I would say is enjoy what you have. Look at that bright side and not to be all like, oh, rainbows, but sometimes we miss out on what is in front of us, and we don't kind of enjoy who's there, who's supporting us. or just like outside the sun, feeling grounded, all the things, but just so you get re-inspired, right? And know life is always evolving, life is always changing. We can't always be 18, we can't always be 19, right? And
Yeah.
so change is inevitable. So roll with the punches, enjoy what's kind of like around you, and like just take the ride, you know?
Yeah. I think those two pieces of advice marry very well together
Right.
because when you can give yourself grace, right? Because we do, most of us human
Yeah.
beings have a
Yes.
tendency to be really hard on ourselves. And that starts at a young age. So it becomes very ingrained very quickly. I watch
Yes.
it with my son's 12-year-old baseball team, right? And they're really hard. I'm like, gosh, that started young.
Yeah.
Anyways, little off topic. So
No.
I think that there's the propensity is to be really hard on ourselves. You should have done better. Drive, drive, drive. You're not getting enough done. You're falling behind. Look at you compared to that person, right? So when we
Mhm.
can give ourselves grace, we can enjoy the moments a little bit more.
Yes.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah. I think
100%. 100%. And I just, I just, yeah, I don't want to be at the end of my life, like kind of saying, man, I wish I just spent more time being happy, or, you know what I mean? I do want to go, I want to go into my grave exhausted because I've done all the adventuring that I
of
can.
all the amazing
Right?
things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Not exhausted from regret and worry and stress, but
right. No,
yeah,
yeah,
we can just,
yes, I want a soccer slide in to
yeah.
the grave going, yes. Okay. Like now
I
you can
love
rest,
it.
right?
Yeah, I
Yeah.
love that.
Mhm.
Okay, so we're gonna get ready to wrap up here. Thank you so much for all of the stuff that you've shared, your journey, your wisdom, the advice. Do you have any, no, you shared some pretty amazing advice, so don't feel
Yeah.
pressured to share anything else, but do you
Oh
have
no.
any final words of wisdom that you'd like to leave people with?
And no, yeah, like just, be curious. Be curious. Take the adventure. If you can take that vacation down the road, whatever, do it. Just, you know, fill your bucket, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I love that. Take that
Yeah.
to heart. So if you're watching this on YouTube, drop in the comments what thing have you been sitting on that you've been wanting to do that you're gonna go, okay, Selena, I'm gonna do that thing. I'm gonna take your advice because it's brilliant. And I'm gonna go do that thing. Drop it in the comments so we can celebrate with you and cheer for you and enjoy it with you and maybe live
Yes.
vicariously through you a little bit.
I love that. Do it. Go get that venti coffee instead of the tall. You know what I mean? Like,
Right, right. Big, small, it doesn't matter. What's the thing you're gonna go do?
right, right.
Oh, I love it. Okay, so how can people connect with you outside of here?
Oh gosh. Okay. So professionally, I love being on LinkedIn. So you can find me by my name, Selena Conmackie. For funsies, I love being on Instagram. So you would find me at the Howy. My business is Howy Socially Inspired,
Oh, I've
and
been
it's
saying that wrong.
no,
I've been saying Howley.
no. So it's funny. Okay, that's really funny. So Howley is actually like a foreigner, and Howy is happy and happy.
Oh,
And
same
so
spelling, different pronunciation?
different spelling, and
Oh,
but that word is constantly said like as the same by somebody that doesn't speak Hawaiian, because it sounds very similar. It's okay, but this is why you say it, so now you know.
now I
So but
know.
yeah, how oli, it means happiness in Hawaiian, and so I that's my dad's Hawaiian name. I gave that to my daughter, and it fits me to a T, I think. So but you can find me at the Haoli, which is Hauoli. So, or you say it the Heather way. I'm not sure where
I
it's going to
mean,
take you, but it might take you to a lot of white people. I don't know.
well, that's what I've been to Hawaii to visit, and that was
Yes,
that
right.
Howley. That was the term I had
Yeah.
heard.
So
So I
right,
was like, oh,
yeah, it's phonetically almost said like how o lee.
now
And
we're all educated, I think.
yes, right, right.
Also, the intro, I totally pronounced it wrong. So just
That's
in case
hey,
anybody has spent any time in Hawaii and you notice that, I'm asking for some grace.
yeah, we are. Look, you know what, Heather, the fact that you even tried and said it, that makes me happy. It's as long, you know what I mean? So, but now you know. Now the next time we talk, you're going to say it exactly the way that you know it's said.
How Oli.
See? Oh my God, perfect.
Okay, look at me learning
Look at
things.
you. Alola Hawaii. I'm so proud.
All right, we're gonna take it slow. So,
Yeah.
okay, so I believe you had some freebies that you were so generously willing to share
I
with my listeners as well.
I did. I have a ton, and I brought that up, and I'm so excited about the conversation. I forgot all the different things because I have so many
It's
things out there.
okay. We can have another one of these conversations. We can add
Yes.
to it. No worries.
So, Heather, whatever I've sent over to you, like, look, I'm an entrepreneur, and I build websites. So I know one of the freebies I think I'd sent over was, what do you do if your website gets hacked? I think all of us have websites, and believe it or not, you need to know what to do when that happens. And it is very manageable, so don't stress out. I believe that's one of the things. And then the second thing was uh, I thought it was a Clarity or a Spotify playlist that I had created. So I think it was just like a 15-ish minute. I don't know why I'm blanking all of a
Okay,
sudden.
no worries. Look, so I think there were three.
Oh,
If I'm not misremember, yeah, you were
yeah,
super generous with it. And so I didn't have them all memorized, but here's the good news.
yeah.
You are offering a lot of amazing things. So we're
Great.
going to drop all of those links in
Awesome.
the description so people can go grab them.
Great.
I'm super excited about the website one because, yeah, I have a website and yes, I do my backups and all the things, but it's
Right.
scary to think that it can be hacked. So I definitely want
Yeah.
to snag that one.
No, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. It has been an absolute like pleasure just to have this kind of conversation with you and then just talking about kind of like this era of our life. And so thanks for having me on.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. I mean, that was personal stuff, and I really, really appreciate you. I know the next person listening is going to relate in some way. I know that
Yeah.
I did, even though our stories are very different. So I really appreciate you sharing everything with us.
Thank you.
All right, take care. Aloha.
Aloha.